They disowned me for being a spare, but after I rebuilt my life from nothing and inherited everything they wanted, the truth they buried came back to haunt them. You're just a backup plan, Riley. Nothing more. My father didn't yell it. He didn't even look up from his financial journal. He said it flatly, like he was doing me a favor, like I should be grateful to know where I stood in the family hierarchy. I was 17, still wearing my diner apron, still clutching my acceptance letter from a culinary trade school I'd been too scared to show them. That moment didn't just hurt, it reshaped me. See, Mason, my older brother, was the star. Football captain, Dean's List regular, the one who got a lakeside bedroom, a brand new Audi on his 16th birthday, and a dad who called him champ, even when he failed a chemistry final. Me? I was the ghost in the guest room, the one who got hand-me-downs and suspicious glares, the one mom called lazy when I slept in after closing late at the diner, the one dad said lacked ambition for wanting to pursue culinary arts instead of a traditional college. I didn't get praised for bringing home as. I got questioned. I didn't get thanked for helping Mason with math. I got lectured for not doing more around the house. But I kept trying. I got a job at 15, paid for my school supplies, even started helping Mason pass calculus when he started slipping. I thought maybe they'd finally see me. Then came the summer before senior year. Mason wrecked his Audi driving drunk back from a party. I found him in the garage, crying and bleeding from his forehead, begging me not to tell mom and dad. So I did what they never would have done for me. I protected him. I told them I'd borrowed the car, that I panicked and fled after the crash. And what did they do? They kicked me out. No fight, no emotion, just dad standing at the front door, pointing out, "You've embarrassed this family enough. Pack your things." That night, I slept under a plastic bus shelter 2 blocks away. The next morning, I came back just to grab my backpack for school. I found a trash bag on the porch with my clothes stuffed inside, and a note taped to it. "You're on your own now. Learn something from this." That was the last thing I heard from them for 3 years. I worked double shifts at a 24-hour convenience store, slept in the break room on cardboard when the manager wasn't around, used library Wi-Fi to finish high school online and earn an associate's degree in business. Then I built something, a one-person marketing business from a town no one cared about. I helped small shops go digital. I grew their reach. I earned trust, then clients. And eventually, I earned enough to pay off a mortgage. In full. Last month, the local Chamber of Commerce featured me on a billboard off I-95. Riley Mercer, Young Entrepreneur of the Year. It wasn't national news, but for me, it meant everything. It meant I was real. 2 hours later, my mom texted me. "Is that you on the billboard?" It was. Then came the flood. Voicemails from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Mason's name on my phone. Messages from uncles, aunts. Suddenly, everyone wanted to reconnect. Everyone wanted to catch up. I didn't reply, because I knew it wasn't about me. It was about what they saw in the background of that billboard. Success. Security. Something they could use. And I was right. The next day, my mom left a voicemail. "Mason and Kayla might lose their apartment. She's 7 months pregnant. We were wondering if you still had that spare room you used to mention." I actually laughed. Because the spare room? I didn't rent this house. I bought it. All 5 bedrooms. Paid in cash. It was mine. But silence, apparently, wasn't enough. A few days later, I pulled into my driveway and saw it. Their old silver Honda parked across the street like it had never left. And there she was, my mother, on the porch, holding a Tupperware of banana bread and a smile like we were long-lost friends. "Oh my God, you look amazing," she said, already walking toward me. I didn't hug her. I didn't flinch. "Why are you here?" I asked. She blinked, as if the question was rude. "Mason and Kayla, they're struggling. She's due soon. They've been evicted. Your father thought maybe we could all stay here, just for a little while." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. "You kicked me out with a trash bag and a note," I said. "You let everyone believe I was some rebellious failure. And now you want me to hand over my home?" "It was complicated back then," she mumbled. "We were doing what we thought was right." "No," I said. "You did what was easiest. You believed Mason because it was simpler than listening to me." For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Shame? Maybe. But it didn't last. "Well, clearly you turned out fine," she said. "So maybe it wasn't such a bad thing, after all." And there it was. They wanted credit for abandoning me. "You're not coming inside," I said. And you can tell Mason, Dad, and anyone else that this house doesn't have a spare room." She opened her mouth, maybe to guilt-trip me again, but I was already turning the doorknob. That's when she said it. "You're being selfish." I paused, turned, looked her dead in the eye. "No, Mom. I'm just done being useful to people who only remember I exist when they need something." And I closed the door. But it wasn't over, because I still had a story to tell. Not for revenge, not for pity, but for the truth. I didn't respond to her message. I didn't rage post. I didn't even block them. But that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't sleep. Not because I felt guilty, at least not at first, but because something deep down whispered maybe I had become like them. Dismissive, cold, closed off. What if I'd turned into the monster they always believed I was? The thought itched under my skin like a splinter. And then a memory came, uninvited. Senior year. I was 17. I'd just gotten called into the principal's office. My brother Mason had claimed I punched him over some nonsense about college applications. He said I was jealous. I hadn't laid a hand on him. But there he was, fake bruises and all, and beside him sat our mother. She didn't ask questions. She didn't wait to hear my side. She cried for him, cradled his shoulder like he was the wounded one. She didn't even look at me. I stood in that office, watching her grieve a lie, and I realized then I was invisible to her. I always had been. That memory sealed it for me. The guilt? Gone. I opened the family group chat. The one I'd muted years ago, after someone posted photos from Mason's Cancun vacation, 2 weeks after I was kicked out. I hadn't spoken to most of them since. Cousins, aunts, family friends, people who assumed I'd vanished because I was troubled. So I told them the truth. I didn't rant. I didn't vent. I wrote clearly and carefully, like someone documenting history. My history. I told them about the car crash, about Mason crying in the garage, about me taking the blame and being exiled for it. I wrote about the trash bag on the porch, the note, the 3 years of silence, the birthdays I spent alone, the empty Christmases, the lies they'd spread. And I attached a screenshot, a message from Mason he'd sent me 2 years ago, a stupid joke, after he found out I was still struggling. Didn't think it'd be that easy to get rid of you faced with tears of joy. I hit send and waited. I'd forgotten just how many people were in that chat, relatives across the country, family members I hadn't thought of in years. But the reaction was instant. My phone exploded. "Aunt Rochelle, is this real?" "Riley, I never knew." "Uncle Marvin, your parents told everyone you ran away. Said you were doing drugs. I can't believe this." "Cousin Danielle, that text from Mason. I'm speechless. I always wondered why you disappeared." Some messages were awkward. A few were clearly about their own guilt rather than my pain. But that didn't matter. I hadn't written it for pity. I'd written it to reclaim my voice. And then something unexpected happened. A message from Kayla, Mason's wife. "Kayla, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Mason told me you were violent, that you'd attacked your mom, that your grandmother took you in because you were unstable. Reading your message, I feel sick." I stared at it for a long time. Then came another. "Kayla, I left him last night." I blinked. She explained everything. After my story dropped into the group chat, she confronted Mason. Read every word out loud. He laughed at first, then got defensive, then enraged. He tried to grab her phone, tried to delete the messages, called her naive. So she packed a bag and left. 7 months pregnant. Went to her sister's house. She ended her message with, "I want my child to grow up with truth, not lies." I replied, "You did the right thing, and that should have been the end." But Mason? He never could handle losing. 3 days later, I was walking back to my car after a meeting, iced coffee in hand, mind already thinking about the next pitch, when I heard my name. I turned, and there he was, Mason, still wearing that same varsity jacket from high school. Eyes sunken, unshaven, like he hadn't slept in days. "You think you're better than me now?" he said, stepping too close. I didn't flinch. "You always played the victim," he sneered. "Even now. What? You want everyone to feel bad for you. You think anyone gives a damn about your sob story?" His breath reeked of cheap beer. "You lied," I said calmly. "You've always lied." He laughed, sharp, bitter. "So what? You survived, didn't you? You got your big house, your billboard. So quit crying." There was so much I wanted to say. About every night, I cried myself to sleep. Every weekend, I watched families smile through cafe windows while I sat in a laundromat, wondering what I was worth. But I didn't give him what he wanted. I stepped around him, opened my car door, and said one thing. You lied. I thrived. And now you have to live with that. I drove away. That night, I had dinner with my grandmother. She'd always been my constant. The one person who never needed proof to believe in me. I told her everything. The group chat. The responses. Kayla's message. Even the encounter with Mason. She didn't interrupt. Just listened, hands folded, eyes focused. And when I finished, she reached across the table and held my hand. You did good, she said. And that was all I needed. But the story wasn't done. Because 3 weeks later, I discover a truth even I wasn't ready for. 3 weeks after that dinner, she was gone. Stage for cancer. Fast. Unforgiving. She hadn't told me. Not because she didn't trust me, but because she didn't want to burden me. You're finally flying, she once said when I showed her the billboard photo. Why would I clip your wings now? The news didn't come from her. It came from my father. Not in a call. Not even a message. He showed up. It was just after dusk. I'd been watering the rosemary and marigolds in the garden she and I planted last spring. The sun was low. The wind was soft. When I heard the knock, I almost didn't answer. I thought it might be Mason again. But something in me, something cold and certain, knew it wasn't over. When I opened the door, I didn't see the man who had thrown me out. I saw someone smaller. His shoulders slumped beneath a worn-out sweater. His hands trembled slightly, holding an envelope and a thick folder. I'm signing over her house to you, he said, his voice low. She said you earned it, more than any of us ever did. That was the moment I knew something was terribly wrong. She's sick, he added, finally looking up. Didn't want to tell you. Said it would distract you from your work. She was proud of you. That word, proud. I hadn't heard it from either of my parents, not once in my life. We sat in silence on the porch. The same porch where my mother had once stood asking for a spare room. Only now, the silence was different. Not full of accusation, but regret. The kind that comes too late to matter. My grandmother passed 3 weeks later. In my home. Quiet. Peaceful. I held her hand as her breaths grew shorter. She wasn't afraid. Just before she closed her eyes for the last time, she whispered, "Promise me you'll plant something new every spring. That's how you start over." And then she was gone. But she wasn't finished. The day after the funeral, while sorting her room, I found a small wooden box under the bed, sealed with wax, wrapped in faded ribbon. Inside, letters, all addressed to me, all dated through the years they tried to erase me. 9, 11, 14, 17, each one in her neat, slanted handwriting. But it wasn't just letters. It was a record. My forgotten birthdays. The nights I cried myself to sleep. The bruises that no one asked about. The school conferences where I was blamed and Mason was excused. The night I was accused of stealing money from my mom's wallet, and she knew it was Mason. She had written it all down. Every lie, every silence, every moment they tried to convince me I didn't matter. And beneath those papers, folded neatly, a notarized deed transfer. She'd already signed it, already filed it. Her home, the home they said I didn't deserve, was mine. I didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because her final act wasn't about mourning. It was a quiet declaration of justice, a permanent record that I hadn't imagined any of it, that I wasn't wrong, that I had been seen. The funeral was small, by choice, no family circus, no open invitation for people who hadn't shown up when she was alive, just a few names I trusted, the people who had walked beside me when I was alone. But of course, they came anyway. Mason, my mother, both dressed in black, as if the color could hide the decades behind them. They stood on the edge of the crowd, watching, waiting. After the final prayer, my mother approached. She didn't cry, didn't speak at first. She just looked around, at the garden, the neighbors, the soft murmur of support around me. Then finally, "Is it true? Did she leave it all to you?" I met her eyes and said the thing she'd always refused to give me. Yes. That night, they left a letter on my doorstep. Typed. Cold. Legal sounding. A request for temporary accommodation for healing and transition. They wanted to move in. To the house they'd once refused to step foot in. To the home my grandmother and I built with soil and sweat and second chances. To the place they abandoned her in when she chose me. I read the letter twice. Then I wrote one of my own. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, thank you for your interest in the residence located at 116 Cherry Hill Lane. At this time, all rooms are currently occupied by peace, silence, dignity, and the long overdue scent of lavender. As such, we are unable to accommodate guests who previously abandoned these values. May you find shelter in the structures built by your own choices. Kindly, despair no more. I posted the letter. Not for sympathy, not for revenge, just to tell the truth. And it went viral. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was familiar. Strangers shared it, commented, messaged me, not for gossip, but for relief. Because I wasn't alone. There are so many of us, so many spares, who turned out to be the entire engine all along. This spring, I planted something new. A white rose bush. I named it Rebirth. And for the first time in my life, I didn't wonder who I was. I knew. I thought that was the end. The funeral, the letter, the rose bush named Rebirth. It felt like the story had finally settled, that I could exhale. But then came the envelope. Not a voicemail, not a knock. A certified letter slid beneath my front door, its contents heavier than paper had any right to be. Inside, a legal notice from my parents' attorney. They were threatening to sue me. Defamation. Apparently, my group message and the viral letter I posted had intentionally misrepresented facts and damaged their reputation within the community. That line nearly made me laugh. What community? These were the same people who told the neighborhood I'd run off with bad influences, who whispered at church that I was troubled, who let people believe I was violent, unstable, a thief. But now, because I dared to speak up, I was a liability. I forwarded the letter to my attorney. Yes, I had one now, an actual, qualified professional who handled contracts for my business. It still felt surreal saying my attorney. She called me within the hour. They don't have a case, she said flatly. There's no legal standing. You shared your own story and backed it with documentation, screenshots, the eviction note, even their own son's text. This is a scare tactic. They want to shame you into silence. That word again, shame. It always came back to that. Not remorse. Not guilt. Just damage control. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry it was public. That broke something inside me. Something fragile I didn't realize was still intact. So I didn't respond. And just like that, they disappeared again. No more messages. No more doorstep surprises. Just radio silence. I guess when you stop being useful, you stop being visible. I should have felt peace. But I didn't. Not right away. There was something about the phrase in the letter, damage their standing in the community, that kept circling in my brain. It wasn't just about the family name. It was about image. They'd never been outraged by what they did to me. Only that people finally knew about it. That kind of hypocrisy, it burns deeper than cruelty. So I did something I never thought I would. I framed the note they left with my trash bag the night they kicked me out. You're on your own now. Learn something from this. It hangs in my office, right next to my Chamber of Commerce award. People frame degrees, accolades, fancy certifications. I framed a threat, and I turned it into a vow. A few weeks passed. Spring edged in early. The rosemary bloomed faster than usual, its scent mingling with lavender in a way that made the whole garden smell like hope. And then, just when I'd begun to believe they were truly gone, a knock. No envelope. No message. A real knock, just after sunset. My chest tightened as I walked to the door. It wasn't Mason. It wasn't my mother. It was my father. I opened the door slowly. He looked older. Smaller. No towering presence. No voice thick with command. Just a man with a worn sweater, sunken shoulders, and a slightly torn envelope in his hands. He didn't smile. Didn't pretend. I thought you should have this, he said, offering the envelope. Inside was a photo. Me, my grandmother, and him. Taken when I was maybe 12. We were outside her old house, smiling awkwardly over a barbecue grill. I was holding a paper plate of corn on the cob. His hand hovered just above my shoulder, like he wasn't sure how to touch someone he didn't fully see. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Because it's the only photo I can find where we look like a family. I didn't take it. Not at first. You still think I ruined your life? I asked quietly. He looked down, took a breath. I think I let someone else decide what was true for too long. He paused. She left something else for you, he said, pulling a rusted key from his coat pocket. To the shed behind her house. She said it was yours. That night, I walked barefoot through the backyard. The grass was cold beneath my feet. The wind carried the faint scent of marigold and thyme. I hadn't been to that shed since I was a child. We used to store broken tools and garden gloves in there. I always thought it was just for junk. I turned the key. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. Inside, Beneath a single flickering bulb was a single crate, labeled in her handwriting, "Wishes." I pulled it down, opened it slowly. Inside were scraps of my childhood, drawings, notes, construction paper menus I'd made for a fake restaurant, doodles of food trucks, stick figure sketches of customers smiling at a place called the Spare Room. I'd forgotten that name, but she hadn't. Beneath the papers, tucked in an envelope, was one final letter. "You are not a spare," she wrote. "You are the centerpiece they were too blind to see. Build your own table. Fill every seat. No one gets left out." I sat down on the dusty shed floor and cried. Not because I was broken, but because someone had seen me, all of me, and believed I would make it. I wish I could say the box in the shed closed the book for good, that finding her words sealed every wound and left only light behind. But healing doesn't work that way. It's not a sudden sunrise. It's a slow thaw, a decision made one quiet morning at a time. And every spring, just like I promised her, I planted something new. The garden behind the house had become something more than soil and petals. It was a map of my survival: lavender for memory, rosemary for clarity, marigolds for protection. Each bloom a marker of where pain had once lived. Life had moved forward. I'd started a side project, a weekly meal delivery from my own kitchen, inspired by the menus I once scribbled in childhood. I called it the Spare Room. Not a restaurant yet, just free meals for anyone who needed them. No questions, no shame. And it worked, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. Until one afternoon, a plain white envelope arrived. No return address, just my name in old, uneven cursive. Inside, a funeral announcement. Aunt Lila, my mother's aunt, had passed. We weren't close, but she was the only one who ever sent me a birthday card after I left. No signature, just $5 and the words, "Don't let them win." So I went. Not for them, for her. It was a modest service. Just a few rows of chairs under the shadow of a willow tree. The sky was overcast, the kind that hangs heavy with secrets. I stood near the back, and that's when I saw them. My mother, Mason, side by side like nothing had changed. She looked older, her hair streaked with silver now, her face drawn. Mason looked dimmed, like someone had turned the volume of his existence all the way down. After the final hymn, they approached me. Not quickly, not boldly, like people stepping across thin ice. My mother spoke first. "She always cared about you," she said softly. "Lila." I didn't answer. She said you reminded her of herself when she was young. Fierce. Too fierce for her time. I nodded once. Then Mason stepped forward. "Kayla left," he said. "Took the baby. She's in Oregon now. Said she's done pretending." He hesitated. "She read your post about the framed eviction note. Said it was the first thing that made her feel sane in months." I said nothing. He looked like he wanted to say more. Maybe apologize. Maybe rewrite the past again, this time with more polish. But I didn't give him the chance. I turned to my mother. "What do you want?" She swallowed hard. "Your father's not well. He hasn't told anyone yet. It's serious. We don't have many options left." And there it was. The final twist in the spiral. The house they said I didn't deserve. The daughter they told the world was lost. Now they wanted a way back in. They didn't want peace. They wanted proximity to survival. I stood there in the graveyard, surrounded by people who'd chosen kindness over kin, and I remembered everything. The night I was blamed for Mason's crash. The trash bag on the porch. The birthdays missed. The silence. And I said, quietly but without hesitation, "You taught me something when I was 17. That home isn't something you're born into. It's something you build." They didn't respond. They just watched as I walked away. That night, another envelope appeared on my porch. Typed. Formal. Just like last time. A request for temporary accommodation during transition and healing. Same language. Same assumptions. That forgiveness was automatic. That walls had no memory. So I wrote one last letter. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, thank you for your renewed interest in the residence at 116 Cherry Hill Lane. At this time, all rooms are fully occupied by peace, boundaries, dignity, and the long overdue scent of lavender. We regret to inform you that we are unable to accommodate guests who once confused silence with compliance. May you find shelter in the structures built by your own choices. Kindly, despair no more." I posted it again. Not for attention. For clarity. For the ones like me. Those who were discarded, erased, called spare, like it meant replaceable. It went viral. Again. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. The comments poured in. I didn't even know how much I needed this. This is exactly what I would have said if I had the words. You gave closure to people you've never even met. And in that moment, I finally understood. I wasn't a spare. I was the blueprint they were too proud to follow. I was the engine they never credited. That weekend, I returned to the garden. It had become something sacred. A map. A memory. A monument. I planted one last rosebush. White petals, wild and strong. This one, I named Return. Not for them. For the version of me I buried long ago, hoping someone would dig her up. But they never came. So I did. And this time, I didn't ask anyone for room. I took it.